The 2021 NFL Draft takes place tomorrow evening. We talk about Justin Fields and where he will potentially land. The transfer portal is becoming more bigger than ever now in football. How does this change the college football landscape? And the NCAA president, Mark Emmert, received a contract extension. Are you disappointed? Are you surprised? We talk about all that and more right here on Fourth and Just Us. Welcome to Fourth and Just Us, everyone. We are so glad that you decided to join us again for another episode. Lericia Harris, Kevin, A.D. Anderson, and Leonard Doc Moore, all here to talk about race, politics, and sports and intertwine that entire discussion, that entire conversation. We hope that you have by now liked, comment, and subscribed. Or if you haven't, make sure you like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. And remember, throughout this entire conversation, throughout our entire show, you can leave your comments and also ask us questions because we will get to those and we will answer those questions best we can towards the end of the show. But we ask that you comment and ask some questions, especially for our guests, because we have a very special guest joining us today. But first, let's get right into it. It is draft week. The 2021 NFL Draft is taking place tomorrow evening, and we know that as it pertains to Justin Fields, the black quarterback, one of the black quarterbacks that's actually in the draft this year, something shifted over the course of the last few weeks. And the question that I want to pose to you all guys is, how do you feel about Justin Fields falling past the third pick? Do you have a problem with that, AD?
I think one thing that's hurting Justin Fields is Haskins and how he performed at Washington. But yeah, I would have a problem with that, particularly if two quarterbacks go in front of him. I mean, he's 6'3", 225. He runs a 4.43 40. He probably has the best arm strength out of any of the quarterbacks. He's won big games. He's been and he's played on a big platform. His coach speaks very highly of him. There's no question that he doesn't have a bad work ethic. He has a great work ethic. So how does he fall down to number 3 or beyond that? That's the great question. And they all said that Mac Jones has the weakest arm out of everybody. So how would Mac Jones go before him?
Lericia, I'm gonna take the opposing view, and I'm gonna think long term. I'm gonna play chess a little bit instead of checkers. It may be in his long-term best interest to go to be a mid-first round pick, go to a better franchise, probably a franchise with more support. You don't want a brother thrown into the heat of battle like Cincinnati did with Burrow, no offensive line. Burrow put up amazing numbers, but Burrow toward ACL toward the end of the season. And so if I'm Justin Fields, while I may be initially kind of hurt and disappointed, I'm thinking, okay, the money is not really made, Lericia, until that second contract. The contract Dak got, the contract everybody else, they get that big money on the second contract. So if I'm Justin Fields, man, I'm going to just deal with the haters and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to be like, no, this is going to set me up for long-term success.
So you think a fall or a slip would actually be very beneficial for his development?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I think the problem that I have is some of the reasons. I think, AD, you mentioned it too, some of the reasons that people were trying to give as for Justin Fields basically falling lower in as it pertains to his draft stock. Like, some people started speaking concerns after the revelation came out that he had been dealing and managing epilepsy since he's been a child. And my thing with that is, if he's been managing that, why is that something that should affect his draft stock? If he's already proven who he could be, if he's given us the stats, especially with his elite college resume, I don't understand how prior to the draft that we've seen that. And I think it's kind of common that we've seen that as well amongst other black quarterbacks who have been in the draft, i.e. Patrick Mahomes and a few others. But like you said, Doc, I totally agree with you. If he goes past the third, I think it will be great for his development, and it could be a little extra motivation for him. We saw that also with Lamar Jackson. Moving on to another situation that has actually become even bigger, especially as it pertains to football, the transfer portal, right? With all schools now accepting transfers and the NCAA passing the rule where first-time transfers will immediately be eligible. The portal has been hotter than ever this past offseason. We saw recently, like Michigan State, they lost 6 players to the NCAA transfer portal. So my question to you all, what are some of the unintentional consequences and how does this change the landscape of college sports? Doc?
I love to admit when I am wrong, but I remember when a lot of us were saying, well, if the coach can leave, then the athlete should be able to leave without sitting out a year. And I remember coaches and ADs were saying this will create free agency in college. And I was all for it. But what I'm seeing now, Lericia, is tragic on 2 levels. Number one, a lot of kids are entering the portal and they aren't getting picked up by another institution. That's number one. But number two, because of now the transfer rule, they don't have to sit out a year. A lot of coaches are saying, no, I'm not going to recruit that 17 or 18-year-old kid out of high school. I'm going to go get me a sophomore, junior. I'm going to get me a transfer because that kid knows the system. That kid can balance academics and athletics. And that kid understands, what is required to compete at this level. There are so many kids in 11th and 12th grade who aren't getting opportunities. My daughter plays volleyball and, every coach tells her, our class is full. Not saying my daughter's 4 or 5-star, nothing like that. But this is what a lot of kids are hearing, is that a lot of coaches now are preferring, Lericia, to go older, to get older kids, as opposed to getting kids straight out of high school.
Well, one of the issues and the problems is this is a virus issue as well. So had they not extended that 6th year, I don't think that there would be this kind of logjam. But what I'm looking at is, and the question I want to throw out there, today Julius Erving was talking about he didn't pick LeBron as being one of the 20 best players because LeBron picked and established his own team, and that's how they won championships. Well, what's to say that, these kids going into college, they play AU and they're all on the same team. So what's to say that they don't get on the phone and say, hey, let's transfer to so-and-so and develop power teams as well. So, I'm looking at that could be the next thing we look at in this portal. But, Doc, to go back to what you were saying, I'm still a strong proponent that these kids should have free movement. And, if you decide to go into the portal and you don't get picked up, well, that's your bad. So, there's going to be a lot of decisions that are going to have to be made, and you're going to have to be very thoughtful about it. And the portal is now here to stay, and I'm a strong supporter of it.
But here's the other piece, Lericia. A lot of kids don't realize that in many ways, when they're being recruited out of high school, they're being recruited based on potential, right? And so what's happening, Lericia, and I hear these stories from ADs and coaches, kid A hops in the portal, doesn't get anything. I know one kid right now is at a high academic D1 school, hopped in the portal. Nobody's picked him up. So this kid now is looking at going to a junior college. And so my message to y'all, if y'all are in a situation where the coach is treating you right, you may be complaining about playing time, stay your behind there and get that degree and just work it out there. But it's too risky hopping in that portal because you may end up at home in the fall.
There's something else we need to look at as well. So the entire women's basketball team at Syracuse has entered the portal.
Yeah.
So what happens to that coach? And Syracuse isn't the only one. There's a couple others where you have 3, 4, 5 players going into the portal. So I would say this, that there's a lot of people asleep at the switch when that happens. Because if you have an entire team that wants to go and nobody's observing or working or seeing that those things are going on, it's everybody's bad. It's just not the coach's fault, but it's everybody who's overseeing and working in that program to allow those kind of things to happen.
But we should not give that coach at Syracuse a pass just because he's a brother. He needs to be held accountable. And man, why you got all these sisters leaving that program?
I'm with you 100%.
So maybe there are some bigger issues that also need to be addressed as it pertains to the transfer portal and looking deeper and really trying to pinpoint those reasons as to why. Example, like you mentioned, AD, the Syracuse women's basketball team. But another area in college sports that we've been discussing, the NCAA president, Mark Emmert, just received a contract extension. The Board of Governors voted unanimously on Tuesday to extend the contract of Emmert through 2025. Are you shocked? Are you disappointed by this news? AD?
I'm very surprised. I didn't see this coming. And particularly when I saw that Donald Remy was leaving. So there's two things that people have been talking to me about. One, did Donald think he was going to succeed Mark? And now that he sees he's going to stay for that extended period of time, that it was time for him to leave? Or is Donald looking at what's ahead for the NCAA down the road, and he wants to pursue other career opportunities and not have whatever's going to happen, because we all know that with the NIL and all the other things we're looking at, that there are some extreme challenges for the NCAA. Donald's a great person, and he does a phenomenal job for the NCAA. So the question people have been asking me is that Donald is getting paid handsomely at the NCAA, where if he takes his government job, it's going to be a substantial pay cut. So is there a backstory to all of this?
Lericia, I'm not surprised that Emmert got an extension. What frustrates me, though, Lericia, is that a lot of athletic directors and conference commissioners behind the scenes are saying he's a disgrace, he needs to go. But I'm not going to allow them to throw Emmert under the bus for some of the inequities during the NCAA men's and women's tournament, or not handling some of the scandals. Because to be honest with you, Lericia, those athletic directors and conference commissioners aren't handling the scandals in their own backyard. When's the last time you've seen a conference commissioner really address a scandal in their conference? No, they all want the money to keep flowing. They don't want to upset boosters. And so, frankly, Kevin, I don't know why they're upset with Emmert. The money is still flowing. He, in many ways, have tried to maintain the status quo as it relates to name, image, and likeness. So to me, their critique of Emmert is somewhat hypocritical.
Well, Doc, I have a problem too when you're anonymous. If you have an issue, you have a problem, you're a member of a membership organization, come forward and tell people that you have a problem, and that if there's enough folks behind this, then they need to address those people who gave them an extension and said, we're not for this, we're not supporting this. But, somebody had to vote on something. And so there's extreme disconnect with the whole organization, if you ask me.
I agree. And I also wonder about the perspective of the student athletes who feel as if they have yet to be heard as it concerns to a lot of the controversies that have been associated with Mark Emmert's name. What do you say to the students who might be upset with this contract extension when they were hoping or looking forward to potentially new leadership?
You're right, Lericia. I mean, that is the problem. And I've never understood with, you have this labor force that is generating hundreds of millions of dollars. Why not include them in the conversation? I've never understood that. And to me, there's just a level of arrogance there. But like we saw last summer, Lericia, when those brothers and sisters started protesting after the George Floyd death, I think, we are at the point where if you have another major incident that happens, you will see that Black student athlete protests go to another level. And here's the other thing, Lericia. Those kids were protesting last summer when the campus was essentially closed because of COVID. Now, once all those students get back and there's an incident and this political consciousness continues to rise from the Black student athlete, you're really talking about the potential for revolutionary change.
Come on, Doc. You're talking about there's not a labor force. They're amateurs. When it went to the Supreme Court, Justice Thomas said they were amateurs. Now, he said that the coaches and the people that were getting paid weren't amateurs. And so there is a disparity there. But when we come to that, Doc, you and I have talked about this. What's going to happen is that these young people are going to get together and form some kind of association or organization. And they're going to start challenging this, because the thing we talked about before, the way Mark put off those kids when they wanted to talk to him, and he said he would talk to them after the tournament, that was one of those things where you had to address that immediately, or you should. Absolutely. Because if we're supporting and this is all about the kids, then that's what should have been done.
Absolutely.
And he did not, like you said, he did not address those students initially. And I think that's where a lot of that disconnect comes from. So I would not be surprised if we saw some students actually came out and express their disappointment, just like we've seen a lot of other administrators, athletic directors address theirs as well, but in a private manner. Moving on now, Kim Mulkey, the longtime Baylor head coach, winner of 3 national championships in 21 seasons, no longer at Baylor. She is now over at LSU, taking over after Nikki Fargas stepped down to pursue another opportunity. Um, Kim Mulkey, a powerhouse personality in the college sports ranks, and she's known for speaking her mind, and also at times having created a lot of controversy. So, what does this move mean? And specifically, what does it mean for the SEC now having Kim Mulkey at LSU as a head women's basketball coach? AD?
I'm looking forward to seeing my friend Don Staley go against her and kick some ass. That's what I'm looking for.
Which I think the SEC women's is loaded now. Some of the best coaches in the country going to be there. You know, you got the sister at Georgia, you got Dawn Staley, you got the other sister at Ole Miss. So I think it's going to be super competitive. And the thing about Mulkey, heck of a coach, you know what I mean? Great recruiter, things of that nature. But you know, she does say some bizarre stuff. You know, she says some bizarre stuff, and we, you know, when Baylor was going through the Title IX scandal with the sexual assault and things of that nature, you know, she basically defended Art Browse in the program, you know, and what she said this year on the eve of the Final Four that NCAA shouldn't do any testing during the Final Four. You know, when you look at everything that's going on at LSU right now, you know, it's amazing that despite the $50 million lawsuit that was filed against LSU a couple weeks ago by Sharon Lewis, and also a class action lawsuit that was filed 2 days ago by 7 women, saying that, you know, LSU covered up Title IX investigation, things of that nature. To bring Kim Mulkey into that mix makes me want to know what is going on in Baton Rouge. Y'all know I spent 9 great years in Baton Rouge. That was my first job after I got my PhD. I had a lot of success there, a lot of great people there. But it seems to me, Lericia, that there's a void in leadership. You have an interim president. They're doing the presidential search now. So it seems to me that there is no leadership. And understand, in terms of the state of Louisiana, LSU athletics is their biggest asset. But I think throwing Mulkey into the fire with everything else is going on at LSU. If I was a beat reporter, I would love to have the LSU beat for all sports this year.
You just like controversy, Doc. That's all that is. You just like to be a part of controversy. But I think as it pertains to Kim Mulkey, adding her in the mix, like you said, it's going to bring a lot of heat to the SEC, which they are already basically traditionally. They have been one of the best leagues as it pertains to women's hoops. So I'm anxious to see how that's going to play out this year. We all know that the Oscars took place earlier this week on Sunday. It was very diverse, saw a lot of historical moments. For example, Maya Neal and Jamaica Wilson, they are part of the hair and makeup team behind Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. They became the first Black stylists in Oscar history to win for Best Makeup and Hair. We also saw the Disney film, animated feature film, Soul, that was featuring Jamie Foxx, that took home an award. All of these historical moments sort of took place with the Oscars this year. The question I would like to pose to you all is the criticism of the Oscars. Is it still warranted? Doc?
You know, Ava DuVernay said it best a couple years ago when I think she got an Oscar for one of her films and directing. And she said that they asked her what it was like. She said, well, they invited me to a room. They called my name. I went up and got my award and I went home. And the point she was trying to make, she says, it feels good to get recognition. But, and this was critical. And I think all creatives need to hear this. She was basically saying she didn't need to be affirmed, right, in terms of Oscar. She didn't need to be affirmed by that organization because she said that she didn't make her films for them. And I think that is a message to all creatives that sometimes you're waiting for affirmation and validation from an external source, and it may never come. But that does not mean your work isn't excellent, and that doesn't mean your work isn't on point.
Yeah, you know, Anthony Hopkins did a tremendous job in the performance he did to win the Oscar. And people were upset because, our boy didn't get the Oscar. But, I can't argue the fact that Anthony Hopkins didn't deserve it. So, and I just think that, I can see that there's some positive things going on. And the affirmation is it's not only winning the Oscar, but, in this society, we look at how we do monetarily, how we do at the box office. So I think that's even more affirmation than winning an Oscar. But hey, the other thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about Coleman Domingo rocking that pink Versace, and then you had Leslie Odom Jr. in the gold suit. But then the best one of all was my little guy, Alan Kim, with the shorts and the high socks.
He was so adorable. I think he won for me. If we had to pick who wore it best, he won for me. Another aspect of the Oscars, though, that I want to talk about is Tyler Perry. We know that he took home the award for his humanitarian work, the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award. And in his speech, he gave a very inspirational, powerful message, dedicating his award to those who would be willing to stand in the middle with him, because he says in the middle, that's where the conversations happen. That's where healing happens. When you heard his speech, AD, what was your reaction to it?
I commend him for everybody he reached out to and he talked to. So I know I'm going to get some bad feedback about this, but I love Madea.
Come on, man.
So,
Wait.
maybe I'm wrong about that, but I love Madea.
Come on, Kev. Come on, man. Now, Tyler Perry, the brother, he's creative, he's brilliant, he's artistic, he's employing a lot of Black folk. Lericia, I was in Atlanta this weekend and rode past his studios. He's doing some dynamic stuff. But I'm in the Spike Lee camp on this. I mean, the whole Madea enterprise, and it's not like he doesn't have the ability. He has creative freedom, but the brother built his whole enterprise off playing some of the most vicious stereotypes of Black folk. So here's a funny story. Me and my wife, first time I went to a Tyler Perry movie, other than Why Did I Get Married? I think that's his best series of movies. But we got some free movie tickets, Lericia. So we went to see Madea's Halloween, Madea's Boo or something like that. And my wife had to drag me there. And I'm sitting there and there's a white family comes in and the white kids got their pajamas on and white kid got a blanket. And, it's just a bunch of clowning and buffoonery. And the white kid next to me, he's like, hey, he's just laughing. He's like, isn't this funny? I'm to myself, man, no, this ain't funny. But I tried to sit through it. But I'm with Spike Lee on this one. I just can't get with the whole Madea enterprise. Because my thing, Kevin, you don't have to go there. He's brilliant. You don't have to go to the stereotypical.
Wait a minute.
That's my 2 cents.
You're trying to tell me you don't like Madea?
Nah.
Never
had.
That's what I'm saying.
You heard my
Never had.
woman.
Hell nah, Kevin.
Hey, and I've been Black my whole life. I got a Black wife. I got Black kids. I go to a Black church, baptized by a Black pastor, all that. I've been Black my whole life. I've tried to watch it. I just can't. Like Meet the Browns and that stuff. I just can't watch it.
What?
I try, but I just can't.
Listen, maybe I connected with it so much because I am from the South. Madea, we have those in my family, okay? So I wholeheartedly understand what it means. I'm just saying, we have several Madeas in my family, okay? So I understand, I connect with it, and I understand, even though, sometimes you do see some of the hard, tough stories, but there's always a message there. He always brings it around with a message and some uplifting, enlightening perspective of it. So I don't know, maybe you don't connect because I don't know. I connect because I'm from the South. Maybe that's why, because you're from Cleveland. But down here in the South, it's Madea's everywhere, okay?
So, Doc, what you're telling me is I couldn't go and play at Baylor.
You couldn't do what?
I couldn't go and play at Baylor. And
why you say that?
Well, all of you that are tuning in, that's an inside joke, so we'll keep it
Oh,
as an
Oh
inside
my
joke.
gosh. Oh
got
my
you.
gosh. Okay, then. We would like to now bring in our special guest that we have joining us this week. He is the Assistant General Manager of the Minnesota Timberwolves, Mr. Joe Branch. We welcome you to Fourth and Just Us.
Thanks for having me today. Really look forward to
So
the
we
conversation.
we have to ask you, are you a fan of Medea?
I've seen some, but I might side with Doc on this,
What? What?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
You know what? We're just gonna keep the show rolling because y'all are really hurting my feelings right now.
Yeah.
Hurt my
Hell to
feelings,
the
turn it
no.
down. Right, AD. We gonna let them have that one over there. But again, we thank you for joining us on Fourth and Justice, where we like to intersect the conversation between race, sports, and politics. And having you on the show, especially at this time, I know it's very, very crucial, particularly after we saw the verdict come down last week as it pertains to Derek Chauvin and the George
Right.
Floyd case. And so, just wondering how you all are dealing with everything now that the verdict has been handed down, and now everyone is just anxiously waiting the sentencing portion. How have you all at the Timberwolves been dealing with this particular verdict, as well as just the overall social unrest in the area?
No, that's an excellent question. I think under Gerson and Ethan's leadership, we've done a great job as a team, just really having a conversation with staff, with our players, business operations, basketball operations. We've had a ton of conversations. Josh Okogie led a nice raffle with different shirts that were signed by 4 teams within the NBA. So that was an innovative approach to what he did there, but it was tough. I mean, as an African-American male, when I first saw, what happened, it was a numbing feeling. I've been detained by police, in New York, so I get it, right? But I think this is a start. This verdict is a start to the work that we have to continue to do in the community for the youth of Minnesota. I think God brought me here for more than basketball, but to get involved with the community as well. So I'm thankful of the work that the Timberwolves, the NBA, and our players are using their voices. I think as a former agent, I think that's what you want to do, is make sure our guys are educated and then be able to use their voice. And some will use their talent, their treasures, or their time. And then we have a number of guys who've really gotten behind the cause to try to end what this has done to our community.
Joe, let me ask you this. How do you advise some of the young men that, you manage now, when they do want to get involved in social justice issues? I know you tell them to be educated, but do you give them any other tips at all before they want to go public or something like that?
Yeah, Doc, I think, we've got a diversity and inclusion team led by True Pettigrew, and Gers is really innovative with his approach, for our players, and he really wants them to use their voices. Some guys might have joined certain protests. Some guys like myself want to get involved with the youth and try to bring more African-American or underrepresented males and females into the sports business. Others might want to buy certain things for, certain families. So I think it's a time, treasure, or talent standpoint, but our guys have really gotten behind certain initiatives and use their voices. So they'll support causes, but really just be their authentic selves. And that's what we really want them to be at this time.
Hey, Joe, talk about your experience. So, I mean, you have a unique experience.
Okay.
You played basketball at Northwestern.
Right.
You got an advanced degree from Rice. You worked at the NBA. You were an agent, and now you're working again for a franchise. So, with your experience and what you've done to get to where you are now, what advice would you give the young people that are watching us tonight?
Well, I think the first piece of advice is just know that the competition is global, not just national. I mean, these jobs, they're, a million doctors, there are a million lawyers, but there are 30 teams, in the NBA. So to get these jobs, we're very blessed. There are a number of people that want these jobs, that could have these jobs, that are qualified. I'm just thankful that, to Gerson gave me the opportunity to come to Minnesota and take the other skills that I've learned being at Nike, being at the league office, being at Rice and getting a graduate degree and being a sports agent here to Minnesota. So the game is global, be coachable, be a great teammate, learn to network, have mentors like, Doc and you are to me. I love you guys. You guys have been instrumental in my career. So I think those are the things that these young men and women have to do.
Don't try to pump them up. You don't have to try to pump them up like that, Joe.
Those are my guys.
I'm just kidding. But I do want to go back to something that you mentioned when I asked you initially about how you guys are managing or handling the social unrest.
Right.
What steps have you all taken, or what all have you done recently as it pertains to the Dante Wright situation? Because from my eyes, you all are sort of at the forefront of a lot of this, being that so much of it has seemed to happen in your area, unfortunately. So what other steps are you all what other steps are you all taking as it pertains to the Dante Wright situation?
Well, again, I think these initiatives are led by, True Pettigrew, our VP of Diversity and Inclusion here on the team. It was a great hire, by Gerst to bring him in. He does player programs in addition to the diversity and inclusion. So, with him, I think the first thing that we do is have conversations, make sure our players can address and express how they feel about the situation. And then it goes to our coaches, our front office, onto our business side. We just have open forums. And then we take to, the community. How do we impact with Coach McKenzie's school? Ethan, Ryan, Gerson, Sachin, Gianluca, myself, Manu. Try to lead in a way, but True is the one who really puts the plan together with Bree and Jen Ridgway to really impact the community. So we just got through, working with on the George Floyd initiative. So now there's another something that unfortunate, but I think we'll be ready and we'll continue to have the conversations. But to me, we really have to impact the community. We've had to pivot, so to speak, and have more virtual conversations and not being able to go to high schools, colleges because of COVID. But I think, we're all getting fully vaccinated. When things are open, we can get back out there in the streets and the schools and really, make the impact that we need to make.
How often have you shared your story? I'm sorry, Doc.
Wait, Lericia. I'm sorry.
How often have you shared your story, Joe? Because I know you mentioned that you had, encounters with the police as well. How often have you shared that story with some of your guys?
I'll tell our players about what I went through. I think, I'm a former agent, so we'll have conversations at brunch, on the road, on the plane, pregame, postgame. I mean, it happened. I mean, it was a very unfortunate situation. It could have been a lot worse. Just being at a YMCA in Brooklyn and being wrongfully detained. But my pastor, as Doc talked about, Reverend Trufant at Emmanuel Baptist Church in Brooklyn really helped me through that, with the city and came to justice. So I just didn't sit back and let it happen to me, but we did what we had to do to fight for what was right, because I felt like that could have been me. With George Floyd, what happened to him? I mean, he's from Houston. He was in Minnesota. I'm from Houston. We were just there last night. We spent time with his family. Several of our guys, Josh Okogie, Anthony Edwards, Carl Towns, gave his family our jerseys. We gave him a signed ball from the Sacramento Kings game by everybody in our organization. So, the Floyd family is with us for life.
That's awesome. Joe, you said something a minute ago that was so profound, and I don't think you realized it. You said that, as an organization, you all have been having conversations. And what
Yes.
I find often too much, Joe, is that executives are afraid to have the conversations, but it's so profound. But, when I compare the NBA to all the other franchises, particularly NFL and Major League Baseball, why is it that, the NBA seems to be a little bit more progressive on social issues than some of the other franchises, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I'm a former athlete, right? And I think we all are, really. So I don't think one league is better per se than another. I mean, I'm encouraged that, this conversation is happening with the with the NFL, with Major League Baseball, with hockey. Here, the Wild, the Twins, we've all joined hands, the Vikings, we've all joined hands and done things together. I think our leadership has been great, but theirs has been great as well. I think to say that the NBA has done a better job, I would like to commend all the leagues because it's not just basketball. I think our guys don't wear helmets per se. You can see them, but I'm thankful for that everyone has gotten involved in the community, in the conversation, because a lot of kids really look up to athletes from all sports.
Gotcha.
Hey, Joe, you talked what you breached on this, but my question to you, and I would wonder to get your answer on this. How was the locker room? Because you have all those folks in the locker room. They come from different experiences. You know, some have experiences, some haven't. And how collectively are the players dealing with that amongst themselves in the locker room?
Well, I think some guys are more outspoken than others in what they're doing, but I think other guys in the locker room will support their brothers, right? And I think, we've got some international guys, Juancho and Ricky, right? You've got Josh, Cat. D'Lo did something not in Minnesota. He did a march in Louisville, in his hometown. So I think you've got the player market and the home market, but I think everybody will do different things. I think do what's authentic to you and how you support. Some might not want to protest. Some might want to talk to schools. Cat wanted to get involved with youth and law enforcement. Josh did something, directly for the right, family. D'Lo did something back in Louisville. So I think do what's authentic to you and do what feels right. I think Ant might do something in Atlanta when the time is right. So we're not pushing guys to do anything that they don't want to do, but collectively, I think you'll find the support in the locker room.
As it pertains to just African Americans and the community of color, right? Where do we go from here? I know a lot of activists sort of posed that question after the verdict came down. And so I wanted to just see from your perspective, where do we go from here?
Well, for me, I think what it really boils down to is really working with the youth. I think we can, people talk about bad apples here, there, but my answer is just getting more involved in the community, helping more students learn about be the next me, be the next Doc, be the next AD, be one of us, be Don Staley. I think be you. So I think, but that takes time. You can't, TD Jake says something, you can't be what you don't see. So they need to see us, right? There needs to be more, minority vendors, working with various sports teams and leagues. So more jobs, more career placement, a pipeline development for the next generation of sports leaders. I think that's my answer. And that's how I'm going to, affect the community in New York, where I used to live, Houston, where I'm from, and the playing market where I am here in Minnesota. So I think God brought me to Minnesota to do more than just work with the Timberwolves, but to work in the community as well.
So, hey, Joe, last week we talked about, had the verdict been different, what would have happened? So as an organization, had the verdict been different, did you talk about it, and what was your response, and how are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, I think we talked about it. I mean, we've got an excellent director of security, Tony Adams. His family has been in law enforcement here in Minnesota for, I think 50 plus years. He and his brothers have worked with all the major league franchises, in Minnesota. So there was a game plan in place. When the verdict happened, we were on the road. We were due in Utah. There was a thought that we would stay and play another game in Utah and possibly divert to Houston. So just because there might have been a protest of our game. So we wanted to make sure everyone was safe. I think building evacuations under Ethan, Ryan, Gerson's leadership, I think the game plan was excellent, but it didn't come to that. I think they got it right with the verdict. I think we all had a sigh of relief. I think we all thank God for the verdict. We were all happy. I think that's a step in the right direction for not only Minnesota, our entire country and our entire world, because I think the world was watching that verdict, and I think we got it right.
Hey, Joe, we got some students watching, and I remember when I was a kid, man, we had this game called Show and Tell, right? You bring a toy in front of the class, and you kind of explain what it was. So what is a typical day like for you as an assistant general manager, from the time you get up in the morning to the time you shut it down? Can you just run it down to us?
Yeah, I'll try. I think the first thing I will say is no day is the same, right? So I think, my first 15 is devotion. I'll do devotion either with guys back from my church in Brooklyn. I'll do it with my wife. Or on Tuesday mornings at 6 a.m. Central Time, there are a group of guys, coaches, general managers, assistant general managers, strength coaches that get up every Tuesday and pray together, and someone leads a devotion around the league. I'll read the news, I'll read the clips, I'll check my email, my phone, Teams to see what's going on for the day. We'll have to get COVID tested. I'll watch film before things really happen, either pro, international, or college. We might have, if it's a game day, we might have a walkthrough. I'll check in with our strength conditioning coaches. I'll check in with medical staff, Gers or Gianluca, my counterpart there. Read Hoops Hype, every morning. Read Twitter. You're on Twitter a ton. We have a game. If it's a game day, I'll meet with, assistant GMs or GMs from another team. I might make a few intel calls about college guys, make some intel calls about trade targets, watch the game. I take notes on our team, what we're doing great, what we're not doing so great during the game. I'll work out at some point during the day, Peloton, running, lifting, something there. Might stretch, at night when I get home. I'll write 3 things that I learned from the game. My wife always asks me, what are 3 things that you learned? So every day is different. I'll probably text 3 guys, a guy that might have had a tough game. Hey, like next play, next game, or might text a guy who had a great game. Similar to things that I did when I was an agent. I'll check the scores, my former guys, right? Or guys that I have around the league that I'm friends with coaching wise, and see what they did, make sure everyone's healthy. If people had great games or if they had subpar games. So it's something that you love. It's from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. I'm just thankful for the opportunity again
awesome,
that I've had this career in sports. Yeah,
that's awesome, Joe.
And when do you have time to breathe?
I think I think Doc. the AD Kev. I'm a part of his devotion group too. I think you just take your time. You pick your spots, right? I think we're all very busy in what we're doing, but again, we're blessed to be in the business. I'm great. I'm thankful to learn from these 2 gentlemen here, to have a circle of influence or mentors, as I like to say. I'm a product of great mentorship, but I think you find the time. It can be tiring at times, but again, you're blessed, and there's someone else that wants your job, so you better do it.
Yeah.
So what would you say is a way, or one way in particular that comes to mind when you think about how you overcame, certain adversities or certain difficulties that were thrown your way throughout your journey?
Yeah, Kevin knows I went through a layoff once at the NBA. I think we all have these dips sometimes in our career, and you can't be afraid to talk about those. I'm sitting here as an assistant general manager, but I worked at my church, led the youth ministry there, during that time. So there'll be times in your career where it might not go the way you want it. So it's how you bounce back. It's how you get up. So I was thankful that Rob Pelinka gave me an opportunity. After that, then that led me to Rock Nation. But I think if I hadn't gone through that, I think my success I would have thought that my success was about me and not about God. It might not have been humble. So it's all about God, right? So I went through something. So I'm not afraid to talk about that. So I'm thankful. I hope that I continue to climb the ranks. Thankful to God, for my wife. Lost my mom about 2 months ago. So she did a great job. I just want to continue her legacy as well. But it's a part of the journey. So without him, none of this will be possible. So I must say that.
So if I may, congratulations on the wedding. Sorry to hear about your mother. We can see she had a great influence in your life.
Thank you.
I like to just share this about Joe. So I learn more from Joe than he learns from me. This brother this young brother is he's phenomenal. And he's been that way from day one. And what you see is what you get. He's authentic. So, God bless you. We love you, man.
Let me tell a quick story. Let me tell a quick story, Joe. We took about 20 brothers from the University of Texas on a Wall Street trip a couple years ago. We visited the NFL office, JP Morgan. And I was like, man, let me hit up Joe, see if we can, go by Rock Nation Sports. And what I appreciate about this brother, he said, man, of course y'all can come by. And 20 of us showed up. And man, sometimes with them Wall Street folks, man, them black folk ain't as real. But Joe, thank you, man, because that was impactful for those young men. You know what I mean? That you just welcomed us in the office, man, and took a lot of time with us and had your staff interact with us. So on behalf of the brothers at UT, man, we thank you for that experience.
No, I love it. I think our sports psychologist here, Dr. Anderson, he talks about what lights you up, right? And I think that lights me up, having young people come in and talk to them about these careers. I spoke to, before this call, I logged on a little bit late because I spoke to the University of Minnesota Sports Management Club, but it's all about the next man up, right? So, that was my mom's legacy. She helped a ton of people at Rice University. She was there over 30 years. So, I'm just trying to do my part on the journey.
Awesome.
One last
I
question
appreciate
before
you guys
you go, Joe. One last question, quick question.
Okay,
what's the biggest lesson that you've learned so far in your career?
Be a great teammate and be humble. I think that's the biggest one. I think it's not about what I know, it's how you interact with people, right? I think, I'm an assistant general manager. I remember when we were at Georgetown with Coach Thompson, it's sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So I'm picking up players' shoes back. My first job in sports was a ball boy at the Rockets when I was in 7th, 8th grade. I'm helping our equipment guys out. I think, that's what it is. You have to have a servant leadership mentality in this thing and not be too big to do anything. So get the coffee, make the copies. Hey, that's just what it is. So I think that's the biggest lesson to me.
Awesome.
I babysat Chauncey one time in New York while Kevin went to a Mariah Carey concert, so you got to do it all.
Appreciate you, Joe.
Oh,
yes,
Beyonce.
Assistant General Manager.
Hey, Joe, it was Beyonce.
It was Beyonce? All right.
Yeah.
All good.
Assistant General Manager of the Minnesota Timberwolves. We greatly appreciate you, Joe. We hope to see you again.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, have a good one.
Love you, man.
Love you too.
We appreciate Joe Branch being able to join us and give us all of that insight. And I hope that a lot of students were able to take something away from that conversation because he's done quite a lot in his career. And so for him to share those words, that was very inspirational and thoughtful of him. But Doc, I do want to ask you about something he talked about, which was the stance that the Timberwolves are taking and how they're moving forward with a lot of the social unrest that's still happening in the area, and also what they've done recently, as he talked about with the George Floyd family. What was your reaction when you heard some of the things that he mentioned the Timberwolves have done?
I liked it. And Lericia, it stands out to me that those are sustainable, meaningful gestures and not just a performative, not just painting something on the court or a T-shirt, but it sounds like the Timberwolves and the whole, professional sports community in Minneapolis seem like they're all in. And that's what we need, Lericia. We need more sustainable stuff. We don't need stuff that's going to disappear once the cameras go away, because I believe that's how you bring about, meaningful and lasting change.
AD?
It's just a matter of first having Joe and some of those other people that are on their staff and understand and been thoughtful about it and been able to do something. And as Doc said, it's just not lip service, but they're actually investing and trying to make that community better and heal it as well.
Yeah.
So I want to move into the area of our show where we always talk about solutions, right? We were talking about the transfer portal earlier in the show and how that's now one of the biggest things as it pertains to football and as it pertains to the entire college landscape. What is the solution to potentially fixing or ironing out those wrinkles as it pertains to the transfer portal? Doc, I know you mentioned what it does for high school students. What would you say? What are you believing is a potential solution to iron out that particular area?
Lericia, what I've been telling people is that just because the NCAA has waived the, you don't have to sit out a year, it doesn't mean you have to use it. There's some data that shows that, if you look at basketball, Lericia, kids that transfer to a more competitive conference get a whole lot less playing time. but everybody wants to be at the big school. And what I've been telling student athletes, if you're in an environment, now, if you're in an environment where there's a lot of harassment and it's unsafe for you, then leave. But we can't just leave because of playing time and things of that nature. We got to stay there and we got to get the degree. And that's what I've been really telling kids. If a university has made an investment in you and they're committed to providing you an education for 4 years, I'm just going to say, stick it out, graduate in 3. If you can, you got 2 years left, or graduate. If you redshirt, graduate in 4 and have a 5th year left and be a graduate transfer. But we just got to stop all the constant moving around, because I really believe it's our kids who are getting the short end of the stick.
AD, do you agree with that?
Well, it shows that this recruiting thing is not an exact science, because you have young men and women transferring from St. Bonaventure's, LaSalle, that aren't looked as big as the Power 5 schools, and now they're going to play at Power 5 schools. But the other message it sends to the parents and these young people that they need to do a better job of asking and seeking and looking at the university that they're about to commit to, because now there are too many people in this portal that evidently made a mistake. And so why did they choose that school? And now the message is that people need to take a harder and better look at where they're planning to go, because if they're going to the right place and they're playing for the right people and they're getting an education from the right folks, as Leonard said, there's no need to transfer.
AD, my question now to you is, I guess we would need your athletic director perspective, right? As it pertains to the coaches and them dealing with the transfer portal. Now it seems as if rosters will be turning over quicker than coaches can keep up. How should coaches handle that?
So, Lericia, at first, I don't know. There were only maybe 2 or 3 coaches that I know of that were for this. Now you have a great deal more for this because they're benefiting from it. And particularly what has saved some of these folks is from the COVID is now that they weren't able to go and recruit high school students, but it made it easier, cost effective to go into the portal and just start texting and phoning these young people and say, okay, so if you want to leave, why don't you come to my school? And I'm going to go back to something Leonard said. When you get these transfer students, you know what you're getting.
Right.
You know what you're getting. So it makes that easier for you to ask that young man or young woman to come to your school, because you pretty much know they're going to fit into my system and what we're all about. But the other thing with the coaches that are losing these young people, one, it's hard for them to acknowledge and look at themselves and ask them, is it me? Why are they transferring? Is it me? Is it something I'm doing? Because I'll just tell you, my experience with some of my coaches, it was never their fault. Right. Never their fault. And I would sit down with them and I would look and see what was going on. And I knew before they came and talked to me about, Mr. Anderson, I'm going to transfer. I knew that they were and why they were going to do it. And then I would sit down with the coach and ask them a question. And they would say, well, I've done everything I don't know. And it's like, really? Yeah. Are you really, really that unaware? So, everybody has to take a part in this. And I just think that, we're going to adapt and everything's going to be good, just like all the other changes that have been made.
Well, we are close to wrapping up the show, but of course, we can't let it end without getting your final thoughts. Doc, what's on your mind?
Rest in power to Shock G.
Shock G.
57, died last week, Oaktown's finest. And, some of my favorite songs, Humpty Dance, Do What You Like, Sex Packets. But, it means brilliant musician, taught himself how to play the piano. But, he was the one who basically introduced Tupac Shakur to the world, So not only was he gifted, but he also had an eye for talent. So rest in power, brother.
AD, final thoughts.
Today, in 1971, Hank Aaron hit his 600th home run. But now I want to go because this is Kentucky Derby weekend. And so I've got some horses for people to pick. But here's the deal. If you don't win and you take my horses, don't write into the program and complain. But if you win, you could send us some of the proceeds. So 2 horses, 30-1, soup and sandwich. And then the other one that I'm high on is highly motivated at 10-1. So go on and put your $2 on those horses, and if you win, send us the money.
$2.
Well,
Just $2.
If they have more.
Okay. Thanks for those final thoughts, AD. And I would just like to remind everyone that this weekend it is the SWAC Championship. That game is happening on ESPN2, and yours truly will be on the sidelines. Alabama A&M, the Bulldogs, going up against Arkansas Pine Bluff. Arkansas Pine Bluff is one of those teams that came out of nowhere this season, and they are really trying to come back and claim victory by taking this title. This is actually, I believe, a rematch of the 2006 SWAC Championship between these two teams. And it's been a while since Pine Bluff has actually been in the top ranks like this and actually had an opportunity to fight for a SWAC championship. So I'm excited about this matchup. And again, if you have time, catch that game on Saturday, May 1st, ESPN2 at 3 o'clock. And you will see myself alongside Jay Walker and Tiffany Green. We'll be calling that game on ESPN2. So hope you all will be able to join us and watch us there. We appreciate you all joining us again for another show. Remember, you can always subscribe to us on YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button on Facebook, and we always appreciate the comments that you leave us as well. We do see them, and we do honor and thank you for your comments, questions, and feedback. So without further ado, we thank you for watching us, and we hope that you'll tune in again next week for another episode of Fourth and Just Us. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.